Recording in progress.
This regular city council meeting is now being recorded, obviously. February 7th, 2023. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll, please?
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Okay.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez.
here.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
And Mayor Rouse.
Here. Very good. And I believe we have a ceremonial item. Would you read that item, please, Madam Clerk? I have a couple of them, actually.
Item 1 is Employee Recognition Service Award Pins.
Ms. Bjork.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. At this point of the month is when we like to acknowledge the service of our fine city employees by reading their names and the length of term of their service. So starting with our 5 years of service, Lucas Signorelli, police officer with our police department. With 10 years of service, Margarita Moreno, police records manager in the police department. Ernestina Valle, assistant parking coordinator in Public Works, and Lisa Gonzalez, senior librarian at our library department. With 15 years, Craig Burley, a police officer in the police department, and with 25 years, Martin Alexander, senior network applications analyst, also in the police department.
All right, thank you very much, and congratulations to all those who got their service award pins. We have the next item, please.
Item 2, Black History Month, February 2023.
How you doing? Good to see you, man. Oh, Mayor Rouse, sorry.
Okay, today we're proclaiming Black History Month, February 2023. Whereas in 1926, Dr. Carter G. Woodson established Negro History Week to recognize the significance of and encourage the study of Black history. And whereas Black History Month, which grew from Negro History Week, was never intended to dictate or limit the exploration of the Black experience, but instead meant to draw the public's attention to factors that merit emphasis. And whereas the 2023 theme, Black Resistance, reflects changes in how people of the African diaspora in the U.S. and Santa Barbara have viewed themselves, the influence of social movements on racial ideologies and the aspirations of the Black community, and whereas throughout American history, every step of progress or improvement in the quality of life for Black people is achieved through struggle, and where race is concerned, legislative or judicial action is rarely proactive, but instead born from a collective movement against racial injustice, as evidenced by the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act, all concessions to the civil rights and Black power movements. And whereas, as current social, societal, and political forces escalate to limit access and exercise of the ballot, eliminate the teaching of Black history, and work to reverse progress, we can only rely on our capacity to resist the enactment of H.R. 40, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the BREATHE Act, and the closure of the racial wealth gap is not the end, because they too will require us to mobilize our resources to fight for freedom, justice, equality, self-determination, and social transformation. And whereas Black history is not just about the struggles of Black families, it also celebrates the accomplishments, integrity, leadership, determination, and true character of Black people, encouraging us to celebrate the history and progress of the Black community while honoring its resilience and commitment to creating new opportunities for future generations. Whereas Santa Barbara is proud of its own local Black history, rich with generations of educators, entrepreneurs, leaders, artists, philanthropists, professionals, activists, laborers, and families, and individuals integral to the fabric of the Santa Barbara community. Now, therefore, I, Randy Rouse, on behalf of the City of Santa Barbara City Council, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the City of Santa Barbara, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in Santa Barbara and encourage community members to engage in activities and discussions to further their understanding of and appreciation for Black history. Congratulations. Again, thank you. So,
Thank you so much, Mayor Rounce. Thank you, Council. As y'all know, I'm Jordan Killebrew. I'm co-founder of Juneteenth SB. That's my hat I'm wearing right now. I want to start off with a story. So last Juneteenth, we were promoting the event, which was our first block party in what we called historically Black Santa Barbara. And it was much to my surprise that I received an email from a concerned community member saying, hey, I'm not so sure that this is historically Black Santa Barbara, Gray Avenue. And it was frustrating for me to be like, I know the stories, I know people that live there. But I was grateful to, of course, Healing Justice, Paige and Turnbull, and Nicole Hernandez here at the city, who had been putting together a historic context statement that I was able to link and share with that concerned community member. And that community member came back to me and apologized. And it was a moment where I was just so relieved because having that backing validated our stories. It validated who we are. And so when people say, why do we need a Black History Month? It's because often our stories, our truths are diminished. They're forgotten. Or, you know, people feel that they're not true. And so I just want to thank you, City, for working with Healing Justice, working with Paige and Turnbull to make this happen and to validate our truths and our stories. So with that, I also want to say I'm so proud of our community. Every year, Juneteenth SB brings together our Black community leaders countywide to help plan and put together all types of events. And so from Santa Maria all the way down to Carpinteria, we have events for you, and they can all be found at juneteenthsb.org. And so I just want to say thank you again, and then hand it over for y'all.
Hi, I'm Leela Richardson, and I am excited to be here. I'm from Santa Barbara and lived in the Bay for some time, and so just hearing about Juneteenth, my mother, Lillian West Campbell, was a person who started some early work in Juneteenth, so it just feels really timely to be here and to have returned. I work at Santa Barbara City College as the new Umoja Program Advisor, and I just want to invite you all to our wonderful community event this Thursday from 12 to 2. We'll be dedicating our mural to the Black community as one of the first Black murals depicting Black life in Santa Barbara. So it's really special to be home and to be able to be a part of that. So please come on out, support the Umoja students, scholars, and the community.
Hello, my name is Akil Hill. I too also work at Santa Barbara City College. Just want to echo what Leela had said. Want to invite you guys out on Thursday between 9 and 12 to take a look at the mural. We'll have an artist talk as well. Also, you know, listening to Jordan speak about the Gray Avenue, my great-great-grandfather lived on Gray Avenue. So it's absolutely, hope you guys can digest his words because it does matter. I just want to say thank you, and hopefully we'll see you on Thursday.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
all right. Ms. Bjork, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mayor Ross.
Okay, with that, we'll go to public comment. We have 3 minutes at the dais on any subject that is not on the agenda but within the purview of this body. And we'll begin that with Michael Baker.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Great presentation, Jordan. Oh, thank you. Absolutely outstanding. Proud of you for the work you're doing. It's really, really good. My name is Michael Baker, CEO for United Boys and Girls Clubs. I wanted to come here today to thank two people, it's actually three people. Councilmember Gutierrez, Alejandro Gutierrez, and Mayor Rouse and City Administrator Bjork for attending our annual meeting and handing out the blue cards to the kids that attended over 200 days at the Boys and Girls Club. It means a great deal to the children when they see the leaders of the community coming out to support them very early in the morning. I know it was early, but we do appreciate you being there. And for those of you that have not stepped foot in any of our clubs recently, I encourage you to come back, and We're certainly looking for volunteers at this point, desperately in need of volunteers, especially with homework assistance for the children that need it. The membership fee at the Boys and Girls Club, as many of you know, is $40 a year. We don't turn anybody away. And a good percentage of our kids and their families don't even pay that fee because they can't afford it. So again, I want to thank the mayor and council member and our city administrator for the support. And I say this each time I come, I'm going to say it again. If you want proof that Boys and Girls Clubs work, look on both sides of the mayor. Those are two alums of Boys and Girls Clubs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Cecilia Fabulich.
Thank you.
You can just pull that mic right down to you.
Oh, they don't make it the height of normal people, do they? I'm with Clean and Quiet SBA, Santa Barbara Airport, and I know many of you have seen me over and over. In December, the Goleta City Council held a special meeting, and we didn't hear anything from the Santa Barbara City Council speak up or support us at that meeting. Chris Hastert attended, and he asked for ideas on how he could help the situation. There certainly is a noise and pollution problem coming from the Santa Barbara Airport, but the city owns the airport, and you guys own this problem. We kind of wonder why it is that your representative doesn't have a voice to vote at the Santa Barbara Commission meetings, nor does the Goleta City Council representative. If you were in attendance at the January meeting, you would have heard the marketing department say that they're working really hard to encourage more carriers to fly more long-haul flights, which would mean an increase in schedules, which means more noise and more pollution. We have to address this problem before the high season comes into effect at Memorial Day. We've heard that Delta Airlines is wanting to come back, and the only reason they pulled out was because of COVID. They had a shortage of crew. Without a voice on these issues, we will get exactly what we ask for, which is nothing. The things that Clean and Quiet are asking of you is to ask for an update on the EIR report. The last one was done in 2017. And since then, there's a dire increase in schedules, and you guys are doing an airport expansion with new gates, which means more flights, more people, and they're reconstructing the road to the airport to allow for more traffic. Well, that's okay, but our children and elderly are affected by these flights that go out early in the morning, 3 flights at 5:15 a.m. and other flights at 11 p.m. and midnight. This is not acceptable. We ask that you, the Santa Barbara City Council, put consumers over commerce. You own the airport, you're getting money from them, but are you paying attention to the community that it's affecting? We ask that you folks please hold a special meeting with the airport and tell them what you want to have done. It's important. This fellow was here speaking for the Boys and Girls Club. What we have, and I know that my homeowners association has sent you an email in this regard, that this affects children and elderly adults.
Thank
And
you. Your
we're
time is up.
asking
Yeah.
for a special meeting the way Goleta City Council did.
Thank you.
When will you be able to answer our questions? We come and speak, but there are
Ma'am,
no
that's-
answers.
We're at the time limit. Thank you.
Will you answer?
We don't exchange at the end, but if you'd like to contact me, please contact my secretary, Holly. She's in the next office over there, and I'll be glad to sit down with you.
We want it to be public. Okay?
All right, very good. Do we have any public commenters online?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 3 public speakers online. We have Aaron Ashland, then Lauren Trujillo, then Brett Garrett. Aaron Ashland, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a suggestion, you guys could put the 3-minute timer up on the other end of Zoom. It would help the people that are calling in. I know the people that are there can see it, but we can't see it. But Mr. Mayor, number one, I have some numbers for you. 4-1. That's right. There are 4 residents, voters, supporters of a safe, vibrant promenade to every one person who doesn't want it. So I just wanted to remind you all that while some people are very loud about their objection to the promenade, I don't want you to lose faith. Come election day, there will be a 4-to-1 ratio of people voting for you, for those of you who supported the promenade. Number 2, please extend the recovery ordinance so businesses can finally have a year or two of clarity and security. Most of us have sunk our life savings and/or our retirements in these businesses and this city. So please meet us halfway and show us the value of our efforts towards being a part of this community. We don't want anything for free. We just want the opportunity to stabilize our businesses after the last 3 years of mayhem. 3, please put back the ordinance that made people walk their bikes on the 500 block. You made police officers' jobs easier when they were short-staffed because they had probable cause to stop anyone. I remember seeing several busts of people riding bikes who had meth or fentanyl on them 2 years ago, but I didn't see any of them this last year. In fact, I sent you a video of someone buying and doing drugs on Haley Street. Please make the officers' jobs easier and the promenade safer for everybody at the same time and make people walk their bikes on the 500 block. Number 4, why can't we do a free shuttle from the pier to the beginning of the promenade and then another one from the 600 block to the top of the promenade? You guys found $14 million last year. We can't hire 2 shuttle drivers to help older residents and visitors get up and down State Street. I think they deserve it, Mr. Mayor. Number 5, Mr. Mayor, do you happen to know how many pedestrian versus pedestrian accidents happened during the promenade's first year? Or do you know how many bike versus pedestrian accidents happened last year? I imagine the numbers are considerably higher for the bike versus pedestrians. So it seems like we could eliminate all accidents on the promenade and creating a safer promenade for everyone, not just people that can afford an electric bike, by simply making people not allowing people to ride their bikes on the promenade. A small inconvenience for a safer downtown for everyone that can't afford an electric bike. Thank you for trying to bring that up, Councilwoman Sneddon, a couple weeks ago. Number 6, there are 7 sandwich boards on the 100 and 200 block of State Street. Did you know that our very own visitor center on State Street has a sandwich board on the sidewalk? Can you believe it? Maybe they didn't get the memo about drugs, vacancies, crime, and violence, and sandwich boards are what's ruining Santa Barbara. Finney's has one, the bike rental place has one, Goat Tree and many other businesses who apparently get to persuade people into their doors, but the local businesses on the promenade can't be given the same opportunities as Finney's and Goat Tree. There is one major difference. The 500 block is a tree canopy that actually blocks some of the businesses' signs, whereas the ones in the California Hotel don't have that.
Okay,
And
your
finally,
time's
Mr.
up.
Mayor,
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call back next week. Thanks, sis.
Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Lauren Trujillo. Lauren Trujillo, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. While I am typically here representing the Library Foundation, I am speaking today on behalf of the Junior League of Santa Barbara. Following the end of National Human Trafficking Awareness Month in January, we would like to bring attention to the work of the Junior League of Santa Barbara and our efforts to impact the astonishing trends that exist in our city and county. Every day in every country in the world, human traffickers exploit people for profit. The poor and the vulnerable are most at risk. Over 70% of detected trafficking victims are women and girls, while nearly 1/3 are children. This is a global problem that hits home here in Santa Barbara. According to the District Attorney's Office, Santa Barbara serves as a natural transit corridor for trafficking activity between major metropolitan areas to the north and south. The Junior League of Santa Barbara has proactively addressed human trafficking in Santa Barbara County by focusing and improving the lives of at-risk young women by educating and empowering them to reach their fullest potential while working to prevent exploitation and injustice in our community. After many months of hard work during the pandemic, the Junior League of Santa Barbara approved support for a new signature project, Living Arrows, which opened for its first survivor in August of 2020, and is a first of its kind in the Tri-County area. Living Arrows is a fully licensed transitional age youth housing program by the nonprofit 4Kids 2 Kids that specifically caters to female survivors of sexual exploitation who are aged 18 to 21. The program at Living Arrows was thoughtfully designed to be the next step in the journey for survivors after graduating from a short-term residential therapeutic program like Safe House. Safe House is a 6-bed designed to meet the very specific needs of girls who have been commercially exploited that the Junior League of Santa Barbara helped open in 2018. A transitional age youth housing program focused on survivors of sexual exploitation is a next step in a monumental win for our state and community, but most of all for the young survivors who are on the path to realize their full potential. In addition to Safe House and Living Arrows, the Junior League of Santa Barbara helped pass recent legislation in September. SB 382 provides prosecutors the option to seek protective orders on behalf of the victims of human trafficking, and AB 1788 holds hotels accountable for sex trafficking on their premises if there is reasonable evidence that the supervisors knew of or acted with reckless disregard toward the sex trafficking activity. The Junior League of Santa Barbara strives to be a leading force in improving the lives of children, youth, and families in our community. To learn more about our work and how you can help, visit our website at jailsantabarbara.org. And before I go, I would be remiss to not make a small shout out to the Santa Barbara Public Library and all their efforts to continue supporting our community during this unexpected closure. Please visit the library website to find Library on the Go stops near you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our final speaker is Brett Garrett. Brett Garrett, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Brett Garrett. I live in Goleta, and I'm a member of People for Public Banking, Central Coast. We are advocating for a Central Coast public bank that will be a government-owned bank to meet the needs of the counties and cities in the Central Coast. With a public bank, our city's money will work for us, creating benefits for the Central Coast residents instead of profits for Wall Street shareholders. This is not a new idea. The state of North Dakota has had its own public bank for over 100 years. It doesn't compete with credit unions and community banks. It actually cooperates with small financial institutions to help them thrive, creating more loans to benefit communities. Our public bank will do the same for the Central Coast. Banks leverage funds and create money in the sense that every dollar of capitalization provides $10 worth of loans. It's a money multiplier effect. Our public bank will be able to multiply our tax dollars, creating money by issuing loans to benefit our region. Our public bank will bring democracy. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me right now. That's one of those airplanes going overhead that the other woman was complaining about because I live right under the flight path in Goleta. So just anyway, if you had any trouble hearing me during that moment, that's the reason why. Anyway, our public bank will bring democracy and transparency to banking, helping to fund housing projects, critical facilities, clean energy projects, and supporting equity while avoiding investment in fossil fuels. Our public bank will represent the values of our region. 3 counties and 9 cities are already engaged in the formation of this bank, and that includes the county of Santa Barbara. These counties and cities are about to finalize an RFP, a request for proposals, to produce a viability study, which is an initial step toward creating the Central Coast Public Bank. And by the way, this is not a partisan issue, but I want you to know that last week, the Democratic Party of Santa Barbara County passed a resolution urging the cities in our county to get involved in creating this proposed public bank. And that's what I'm asking you to do. The person to contact is a staff member at Santa Cruz County. His name is Peter Detlefs, and he is the principal administrative analyst. He has written a draft of the RFP, and at this time, he's seeking input from the participating agencies to finalize the RFP. So this is a great time for the city of Santa Barbara to become one of those participating agencies. Again, his name is Peter Detlefs at Santa Cruz County. And I thank you very much. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you. Are there more speakers online, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the next speaker is E-Planet Thunderstriker. Mr. Thunderstriker, by your slip, do you have comments on both general public comment and on number 9? Okay. In the future, I'd ask you to fill out 2 separate slips, please. Go ahead on your general public comment.
part of it. Since that time, I went to the Commission for Women. I made some notes I was going to give them about maybe having like an American Idol, a few different varieties to find a president. And I decided that I am going to have a conditional candidacy for the vice presidency. Trying to be a global holiday world music producer, I would resign if we went to war, or if the president was killed or resigned. I couldn't supervise people killing other people. I'm doing this because of corruption in America that means, well, not only my document, trying to get out of here so I can resolve this differently. It's just we go from a generation that has people don't lock their doors at night, and then we have every other day, on average, mass shootings. And we shouldn't have something like a sex trafficking awareness. You know, that's just crap. Advances in technology, advances in medicine, not advances in government, deteriorating. And it's completely questionable if the people involved wanted to really create a problem that we would even have a typical normal election coming up. So I wasn't able to address the concerns that are going on in City Hall. When I say America's corrupt, we're not talking about why China mailed seeds through Taiwan Shipping Company, that countries from around the world aren't coming together to discuss a World Citizens Organization and quite possibly world peace. I mean, if you have China and America involved, we're big players. You have little tiny countries that they don't want to get invaded. They're going to be joining up on that. A lot of other countries that would do it just to save face, they're at least going to get at the bargaining table. But it's because of American corruption that it's not getting talked about. And that corruption goes into City Hall, in this building right here. You know, why these people are doing it, if they're going maybe Republican or Democrat, I don't know. But when you consider people that don't lock their doors at night to what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, you have to wonder if maybe somebody isn't engineering more and more and more problems. Black Lives Matter, that whole thing was probably put on by Power Rising, a group that developed based on my World Citizens Organization structure that Kamala Harris approved of. And she's now the vice president, and I'm sitting here and not able to get medical treatment for bugs and a lot of other things that are going on. So it might be a really good place for me to be going for the next vice presidency, working under a female president, which may be vetted out within the next year.
All right, further public speakers?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. We'll move to consent calendar. Do you have some items to read?
Yes, item 3, water efficient landscape standards ordinance adoption. Recommendation that the city adopt by reading of title only. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara repealing Chapter 22.80 and amending Sections 14.23.005, 28.80.150, and 30.185.440 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code relating to water efficient landscape standards. Item 4, Second Amendment to the Solar Photovoltaic Power Purchase Agreement at the Granada Garage. Ordinance Adoption Agreement. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the Sustainability and Resilience Director to execute a second amendment to the Power Purchase Agreement with SB Granada Garage Solar LLC to increase the energy purchase rates for the renewable energy system at the Granada Garage. And item 5, establish low-income homeowner rehabilitation pilot program for city residents through Habitat for Humanity with $50,000 allocation from Inclusionary Housing Reserve Funds Resolution Agreement. Recommendation of the Council A, approve the establishment of a new low-income homeowner rehabilitation pilot program by providing up to $50,000 in grant funding to Habitat for Humanity of Southern Santa Barbara County to operate the program, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute such agreements and related documents subject to approval as to form by the city attorney as necessary. And B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending Resolution Number 22059, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023, to approve an increase in fiscal year 2023 expenditure appropriations in the general fund in the amount of $50,000 funded by General Fund Inclusionary Housing Reserve Funds to fund the Habitat for Humanity homeowner rehabilitation program.
All right, very good. Are there any items that anybody needs to pull? Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I need to pull 2, number 6 and number 8.
Okay. And number 6 and number 8. Okay. Let's see, which ones do we need to read? Both of those? One of those.
Mr. Mayor, I'll read number 8.
Okay, thank you.
And that's number 8, new city administrator employment agreement.
All right, very good. Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I know I'm in the minority on disagreeing with both of these, so I just wanted to say a few words. Would you like me to go through both of them or just one?
You can go ahead and address them both if you'd like.
Okay. So number 6 is the item about increasing our contract with legal firms concerning several legal cases from $100,000 to $250,000. As we know today, in talking about those have the potential to also increase exponentially if we are not initially successful at hearings. And I think I can talk about this, can't I?
Madam City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Jordan, you can talk in general terms.
Is that general enough so far?
So far, so
Okay,
good.
thanks. And so I'll just tell you that I'm not optimistic about the outcome painted, and I in fact believe that we're pursuing and defending steps that we take that from the public's point of view are largely ineffective. And so I would prefer not to go down that path. And in fact, if those numbers were to grow from the 100 to the
Mr.
200.
Mayor, Mr. Jordan, I would prefer you speak to the contract that's at issue, and if you're wanting to make a motion not in favor of the legal services contract, that's fine.
Yeah, and in addition, I don't think we shouldn't make suppositions at this point in the game. Strictly to the item, please.
All right. Let me see if I can rephrase that. I guess there's no point in that item other than just saying I'm voting no.
Okay,
And
and then would
so
you like to address?
the reasons were talked about in closed session today.
That's correct.
Yep.
Would you like to talk on number 8?
Okay. Number 8, that I also am at odds with we're increasing the city administrator's contract by 15%. It's a wage increase that has reasoning behind it that I don't find credible or particularly needed. And I think the optics are horrible at this particular point in time in relationship to our ability to pay our other employees a reasonable wage. So I'll be not supporting either one of those items.
Okay, and do you need to vote on those separately?
Correct.
All right, very good. Further items to be spoken on. I have one request to speak on item 9. Would you read that item, please? Oh, no, item 9 is, I'm sorry, it's not on consent. Forget it. Don't read that.
Mr. Mayor, I do need to just read the title for number 6 into the record, and that was just authorization to amend the legal services agreement with Colantuno, Highsmith, and Watley PC for special counsel services agreement.
All right, very good. So do I have,
I move
you move,
to move the consent,
okay, but, well, with the exceptions of
Oh.
6 and 8,
with the exception of 6 and 8.
okay?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor of moving 6 and, of everything but 6 and 8?
Aye. Are we doing that orally?
We're doing it,
We'll do this. So confirming this is a motion for the entirety of the consent calendar except for items 6 and 8, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez and seconded by Councilmember Harmon.
Wait, sorry, I'm
You're-
confused. So if one person says that they don't want to vote on 2 items, we can vote on those 2 items, right?
we will vote on those items. We will take them separately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll set up a vote
So
here.
for the balance of the calendar, other than item 6 and item 8. Everybody got that?
Yes.
All right, very good. Let's go
And
ahead
that passes unanimously.
Okay. Let's move to item 6.
I'll move item 6.
Moved
Second.
and seconded. Moved by Friedman, seconded by Alejandro Gutierrez. Can we vote on that one, please? Item 6.
Sorry, this is a motion for item 6, motion by Councilmember Friedman,
Second by Alejandro
Seconded
Gutierrez.
by Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez.
Correct.
Do you have the vote in front of you?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Here we go.
there you go.
All right, very good. Passes 6-1.
And with the, that is 6-1 with a no vote by
Michael Jordan?
Councilmember
Okay.
Jordan.
Let's go to item 8,
I move item 8.
moved by Alejandro Gutierrez,
I'll second it.
second by Eric Friedman. May we have a
Okay,
vote on that, please?
this is a vote on item 8, moved by Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez, seconded by Councilmember Friedman.
Okay. Passes 6-1, just with the Jordan being no. All right, that concludes the consent calendar. Thank you very much. We have an item here to read, if you would.
Very good, and that is item 9, water supply update and annual water supply management report.
All right, we have a rather unusually sunny Mr. Hagmark right here. So can we have this report, please?
Yes, Mayor Rouse, council members, it is a pleasure to be here with better news. Start off by saying that. Two good things to celebrate, and we'll be getting into the water supply, but I also want to recognize our new water supply and services manager, Dakota Corey, who will be giving to the bulk of today's presentation. And with that, as you may recall from these presentations, they're kind of a compilation of two things. We are looking back at water year 2022, kind of diagnosing how it went, how our projections went, and then also finding that our groundwater basins are in balance. And then, of course, we'll be looking to the future, and that's a much better future than it was just 3 weeks ago. All right, so here's the rundown of our outline. We'll recap 2022. We'll go through our current water supply status and outlook. And then in accordance with our requirements, we'll make the findings for our groundwater basins to be in long-term balance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Hagmark. Mayors, council members, my name is Dakota Corey, and I'm the new Water Supply and Services Manager. And first, I want to recap water year 2022, and this is really a good news story. This is where we've been and where we are now, and the tides have really turned. So we can start looking at the state level here. I have two graphs in comparison. The graph on the left was at the end of water year 2022. Our water years do run from October to September, so October 21 to September 22. And you can see that there's a lot of red on that map, indicating both extreme and exceptional drought throughout the state. The graph on the left is from January 24th, 2023, after our recent rains, and you can see that the water supply situation, the drought conditions across the state have improved dramatically. Santa Barbara County specifically, at the end of the water year, was conditioned as an extreme drought case and is now currently abnormally dry. I do want to point out that in these graphs, what we're looking at is a measurement of characteristics in the environment, so it actually doesn't have anything to do with how much water supply might be available in a given area, but it's things like stream flow, soil moisture content, et cetera. And so you can see that we've gone from a very dry state to a much improved wetter state. This graph here is a historical account of our rainfall back to 1949. And you can see that the story here is that it's kind of flood or drought. We have a very sporadic precipitation pattern where we get over 50 inches of rain in some years and much below average in the teens worth of inches of rainfall in other years. The red line on the graph shows our historic average at Gibraltar Reservoir, which is about 28 inches of rain a year. And then I want to point out the orange line, which is a 10-year rolling average precipitation. And you can see there's a downward trend highlighted by the arrow on the right-hand side of the graph that shows that we've really been seeing a string of dry years for the past 20 years, essentially. So we had some very wet years in the early 2000s, and it's been downward since then. And so this really contextualizes the environment in which we do our water supply planning here in California. This graph doesn't include the current water year, so we would have another blue line up above that red average, which is excellent. This just has some rainfall totals for the end of water year 2022, again, ending in September, although this is county data and they end their water year in August for some reason. You can see that water year 2022 was historically below average. Our main mile marker is at Gibraltar Reservoir, and we are at 68% of average. Lake Cachuma was 65% of average, and the city of Santa Barbara was at 73% of historical average. Again, now the good news, we're into water year 2023, and at the current date, we're 272% above the historic average for the date, or this time of year, with over 35 inches of rainfall at Gibraltar Reservoir to date. So it's really just a story of completely different water years. This is a graphic that shows how we plan to use our water in water year 2022 versus what we actually used. The bar on the left represents our plan, and the bar on the right represents our actual usage. The height of the bar represents how much water we anticipated using versus how much we actually used, and you can see that we used about 1,200 acre-feet less than we anticipated, so a good news story. Our community continues to use our water resources very efficiently. Also, you can see that we plan to use a large portion of Cachuma water to meet our needs in water year 2022. This was coming out of that dry year, but we did get enough rainfall to provide some water from Gibraltar Reservoir, so that reduced the amount of water we needed from Cachuma. Gibraltar is the grayish color and Cachuma is navy. We also produced a significant amount of desal water to meet our needs, and any time that we can use these other sources other than Cachuma, that means that we get to bank that water as carryover water in Lake Cachuma, and that just stretches our water supplies into future years. And lastly, this is a graph of our total water production back to 1985. The black line is our actual water production. You can see a few significant droughts in the history, one in the late 80s, early 90s, and then our more recent drought that started in about 2012, where that line just plummets. And then we have a slow rebound, but we never rebound to historic levels. I'd like you to pay attention to the right-hand side of the graph where you'll see a dotted blue line. That represents our projections for water use out into the future according to our Enhanced Urban Water Management Plan. And really the takeaway here is that our demands are tracking very closely with our plan, which makes my job as a water supply planner a lot easier because when I'm projecting out into the future, I can feel pretty confident that we understand how our community is behaving in terms of their water use. I do expect that that black line is probably going to flatline a little bit or maybe even drop off because of the wet conditions that we have currently. There really shouldn't be anybody watering landscape right now. And so we may be a little bit below our demands, and that's another good news story in terms of stretching our supplies into the future. So now I want to go into the current status of each of our individual water supplies. Santa Barbara has one of the most diverse water supply portfolios in the state, and what that does is it allows us to utilize different supplies when they're available and not be stuck if we only have one supply that we're relying on and it goes dry. So starting first with the city's owned and operated Gibraltar Reservoir, which is on the San Ynez River. Currently, it is full and spilling. It started spilling on January 5th with the first round of those storms. This picture on the right is after the January 10th storm, and you can see that there is a lot of water coming over that spillway. In water year 2022, as I mentioned earlier, it did provide 14% of our supplies, or about 1,600 acre-feet. Currently, the water is pretty turbid. We had a lot of sediment come down the watershed in those big storms, and there's some organic content from the burn areas, but we're hoping that's going to settle out very quickly, and we'll be able to start diverting Gibraltar water probably within this month. Downstream of Gibraltar is Cachuma Reservoir, which is a shared resource with the city and the other Cachuma member units. I got an email from the Bureau of Reclamation that they were going to start exercising the spill gates today. I don't know if that's officially considered a spill or if that's operational, and we'll get some clarification there. But for all intents and purposes, Cachuma is full and potentially spilling.
It provided about 40% of our supplies in water year 2022. And there's kind of a juxtaposition here I want to explain on Kachuma when it starts to fill, because I know since I've worked in the city, I've never seen it happen. So as you recall, we had quite a bit of what we called carryover water stored in Lake Kachuma, which was we would get an allocation each year for our Kachuma project water rights. And any water we didn't use, we stored in Kachuma, and we could carry it over for next year's usage. Currently, we have about 17,000 acre-feet of water stored in Kachuma, and that represents about a year and a half of the city's total demand. As Gibraltar starts to spill, the first water that spills out of the lake is non-project water, and the second water is carryover water. So if the spilling that's starting is categorized as a spill, we will start to lose that stored carryover water. The flip side, or the bonus of a spill period, is that any time that Kachuma is spilling, we actually get what I'll call free water from Kachuma, meaning that any water we use from Lake Kachuma isn't deducted from our Kachuma allocation. So we can kind of use as much as we can take while Kachuma is spilling. Also, a full Kachuma means that we will be getting full allocations from the lake for several years. So we did submit a request along with the other Kachuma member units for a full allocation for water year 2023. We had gotten a 0 allocation at the beginning of the water year when things were still dry. And that is 8,277 acre-feet of water. And we anticipate that we'll have that allocation in the coming years as well. Moving on to kind of a bigger picture on the state water project, also a good news story. As I showed you in that map at the beginning of the presentation, the state was very, very dry. The governor was very concerned, as was the State Water Resources Control Board. We had an initial allocation on the state water project of 5%, which is a historic low tied with the previous year. It's now been increased to 30%. And so what that means for the city is the maximum allocation we have in any given year on the state water project, or our max table A amount, is 3,300 acre-feet of water. 30% of that is 990 acre-feet. So that's the water we have available to us currently. I anticipate that that allocation could still go up. When DWR increased it to 30%, they still hadn't considered snowpack, and snowpack in the state is above 200% of normal for the time being. And a lot of the major reservoirs, which are like 40 to 60% full right now on the state water project, will actually fill and spill as a result of snowmelt. So I anticipate we'll get even more allocation on the state water. Some real good news story here is we had some carryover water stored in San Luis Reservoir on the state water project, and that, with our new allocation, has allowed us to pay back all of our water debt on the state water project. And so back in 2016, we purchased water from AVEC in the Antelope Valley, and part of the rules of that exchange was that we had to repay some of the water back to them within 10 years, and we had a remaining balance of 2,000 acre-feet of water. We just initiated that repayment, and so we'll have no water debt moving forward. And desalination continues to play a critical part in the city's water supply portfolio. In water year 2022, it represented about a quarter of our total water use, and it really plays an important role in drought preparation, response, and recovery, in that when we're producing desalinated water, that's allowing us to bank more water in Kachuma, which lets us stretch our supplies so that we can withstand dry periods. Because of the wet weather, and our improvement in our water supply situation, we're able to actually turn the desal plant off on February 1st. It's been running continuously since we started it up in 2017, and it hasn't really had any chance for maintenance. And so this is a really great opportunity to take a couple of months, do some maintenance on the plant, and we'll resume producing desal water on April 1st. That also saves us money with electrical and chemical costs. Our groundwater supply is another good news story. We had just started pumping groundwater again last summer, anticipating another dry winter and worrying that we needed to stretch our supplies out for the next couple of years. As soon as it started raining, we turned our groundwater wells off. And hopefully with some of the rainfall we've gotten, we can start to see some recovery of those groundwater basins. As you know, they have been depleted from our pumping over the last several dry years. They're currently at about early 90s levels, which was after our last drought, and it does take some time for them to recover. Another good news story here is that we're reworking to restart our pilot ASR study, which would allow us to inject water when we have it into the groundwater basins to help them recharge faster. We had started the pilot under the guidance of the Division of Drinking Water, and then we needed to turn our wells back on for production purposes, so we had to stop the pilot study. But now that we don't need to pump the groundwater basins, we can start that project up again. And finally, recycled water is another important component of our water supply portfolio. It represented about 9% of our total supplies in water year 2022, and we also used about 300 acre-feet of water for processes at El Estero Water Resources Center. It's really important recycled water use because it offsets potable use for large landscapes. Tertiary treated recycled water is excellent for landscape, and therefore we can save our potable water for other uses like drinking water. So that is a summary of each of our individual supplies and kind of an overview of where things stand in terms of water supply outlook across the state. If we put all of that together and ask where do we stand now, this is a summary of the answer. In short, the city has plenty of water to meet supplies for at least the next 3 years. And when I make this analysis, I always assume that we're going right back into drought conditions, because if you recall from that precipitation graph, it's fairly probable that we could have more dry years to come. So we want to be prudent with managing our water supplies and always assume that there's more dry years to come. But even under those assumptions, we have plenty of water. Let's see, I just wanted to also mention that we encourage our community to continue its efficient use of our water supplies. Even with a full Cachuma and Gibraltar, again, we never know when the next dry years are going to come, and our community is extremely efficient. We use the same amount of water we did in the 1950s, with population more than doubling since then. So super impressive how our community uses its water efficiently. Oh, and I did want to mention too that we do currently still have on the books a stage 2 water shortage condition. That was largely driven by direction from the State Water Resources Control Board and the governor last spring. Staff does plan to come back and rescind that because our water supply situation definitely doesn't dictate it. We are still waiting for feedback from the governor and the State Water Resources Control Board, since that was kind of driving that drought declaration. So probably in the April-May timeframe we'll be back. And this is just a graphical representation of the overview I just gave. This is water usage from 2012 to 2022, and then it projects out for 3 years. You can see the height of the bar represents how much water we used or anticipate to use, and then the colors of each bar represent which source that water will come from. And so really the story here is when we have surface water, which is navy and blue in this graph, Gibraltar and Cachuma, we use that water, and then when it starts to dry up, we use other sources such as groundwater and state water project water. Looking out to the future, we anticipate that Cachuma and Gibraltar and desalination will meet our community's needs for at least the next 3 years. So now I'm going to change gears just a little bit. As Mr. Hagmark mentioned earlier, part of our presentation today is that we need to make some findings regarding our groundwater basins and adopt our annual water supply management report. And this is a requirement that came out of our connection to the State Water Project and the EIR associated with that. And we said that we would come to council each year and make a finding that our groundwater basins are in long-term balance and that we're using those sources appropriately. So I'm going to give you a breakdown of where they stand currently. Before we get to the groundwater, though, I did want to mention the annual water supply management report, which is both available online and part of the agenda packet, has a great summary of some important water supply planning issues that the city is currently working on in partnership with some of our JPAs. And so just to mention briefly here, on Cachuma, we're really focused on water rights for the Cachuma project and then the relationship with the effects of any fish on the Santa Ynez River. So we've got a couple items there that we're continuously working on. On the State Water Project, there's issues related to sort of the long-term reliability of that project with Delta conveyance, and then also issues with our contract, which is currently held by the County of Santa Barbara. And And then we have like sub-agreements with the county as the water provider. So several issues there that we continue to work on. We also have our Gibraltar Pass-Through Operations Agreement. That's an agreement we signed in the late 70s, I believe, to not raise Gibraltar Dam in exchange for the ability, as the dam silted in and we lost capacity, to store water that spilled out of Gibraltar in Lake Cachuma with like the city's name on it. So it would be an account for the city. That agreement is active, but we haven't been able to set up that storage account in Cachuma because we need a Warren Act contract from the Bureau of Reclamation. And that has been a very difficult process, although staff continues to engage with the Bureau on that. And then finally, we just wanted to make a quick mention that we connected the Lincolnwood neighborhood to the city's water system this year. That has benefits for both Lincolnwood in terms of reliability, but also for the city as a whole because they had 2 wells in our Foothill Basin, and now the city can kind of manage those water resources holistically and provide good water to Lincolnwood. Now I'm just going to briefly go over a couple of capital projects specifically related to water supply that are also described in the annual water supply management report. First is our Desal Link conveyance project, which is represented by the blue line on the graph on the left. So that connects our desalination facility to a transmission main up by the Mission, which then will take the water further up to our Cater water treatment plant. Once that line is completed, and some pumps are installed, which is the next project, we will be able to distribute our desalinated water throughout the city, and it also opens opportunities for regional partnerships with other South Coast water agencies such as Montecito Water District, Carpinteria Valley Water District, and La Cumbre Mutual Water Company. The graphic on the right represents our desal product water pump station, which is related to Desal Link because you need some pretty big pumps to pump that water from down by the ocean at the desal facility up to Cater. And so that's another project. I believe that one is out to bid or going out to bid very soon. And there's a long lead time on pump parts, but we will keep working on it. Another project we have in the works is a pipeline that will connect the Alameda well to our Ortega groundwater treatment plant. Our Alameda well is located in storage unit 1 and doesn't have the best water quality. If we can pipe that water to our Ortega groundwater treatment plant, it provides another source of water in the storage unit 1 for the city's use. And that should be completed this year. Again, I mentioned earlier that we're restarting our ASR aquifer storage and recovery project. If you have questions about that, happy to answer them. And we are also in full deployment of our automated metering infrastructure program, or AMI program. This is going to provide more frequent meter reads to our customers so that they can better understand their water use. We get reads every hour, and then there'll be a customer portal. So customers that are interested can really understand their water use throughout the month rather than just getting a one-time reading at the end of the month. It should encourage conservation, help detect leaks, and also just provide customers with much more information so they can be in control of their water bill. And finally, the COMB Secured Pipeline Project is a project we participated in with the other COMB members. And this was when Cachuma was very low, as you can see in the picture. They actually completed this project the night before Cachuma filled back up. And they had to get their stuff out like in the rain and the mud. So they demobilized during the storm. But the goal of this project is when Cachuma does drop so low that we can't get water out of the traditional methods from Bradbury Dam, this pipeline allows us to install an emergency pumping barge so that we still have access to our Cachuma water when the lake gets very low. This is a really important project for our community. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit once again. Like I said earlier, we need to make findings that our groundwater basins are in long-term balance. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of groundwater. We do use it conjunctively in the city, meaning that when our surface water supplies are low, that's when we tend to turn on our wells. So it's more of a drought supply. And it can also be an emergency supply if we were to have, say, an earthquake or something that cut off our access from the Santa Ynez River. It's a local supply along with desal that could continue to supply our community. This is a very colorful map of our groundwater basins. Just to orient you a little bit, there's a blue dotted line which represents our water service area, which matches fairly closely with the city boundaries in gray, although it includes Mission Canyon. And then In yellow and red hashed lines is our Santa Barbara Basin, which includes Storage Unit 1, which is one of our primary production basins, located mainly under downtown Santa Barbara. And then the red line outlines our Foothill Basin, which is in the Upper State Street and the Foothill area of the city, and is our other main producing groundwater basin. So the Foothill Basin, which was the basin in red, there's a few pumpers in the basin besides the city. We did a report with the USGS in 2018 and estimated that the city's drought yield from that basin is just a little over 8,100 acre feet in total, so that's over multiple years. We have been pumping that basin during the long stretch of dry periods that we've been experiencing, so we estimate that we have about 3,800 acre feet remaining of water stored in those basins. And if you want to see the accounting for that, it's detailed in the annual water supply management report. Water levels are low, as I mentioned earlier, close to the 90s levels, but we do still have water available if needed. In Storage Unit 1, the concern isn't so much with the groundwater levels. In fact, this basin fills right back up and starts artesianing very quickly. But it's seawater intrusion is our concern with production from this basin. And so this is a bigger basin, and we're the primary pumper, so we estimate we have about 16,000 acre feet in total over multiple years of drought storage, and that we have about 10,000 acre feet left. So there's quite a bit of water left in Storage Unit 1. And again, the issue here is seawater intrusion. I have several slides that kind of walk through this, but I'm going to explain it mainly in this slide and then go quickly through the others. If you have questions, feel free to ask. So we do measure chlorides at several monitoring wells in Storage Unit number 1 to keep track of seawater intrusion and how far inland it's come. The 3 big red arrows on this map represent 3 different monitoring wells. You can see one is very close to the coast, one is very close to El Estero, about halfway between the coast and the 101 freeway, and the other one is just on the inland side of the 101 freeway. If you also look closely at the upper left-hand corner of this illustration or graphic, you'll see there's some little black triangles. Those represent our production wells. And so we would expect to see chlorides to be higher down by the ocean, and then as we move inland, we don't want them to get too high near our production wells. And so really that red arrow on the inland side of the 101 is kind of our canary in the coal mine that we really want to keep track of, but we monitor all of these wells. So what does that look like? Starting at the monitoring well closest to the ocean, you can see that we do have fairly high chloride levels, and you can see that they spiked during the last drought in the 80s and 90s, and then the basin recovered, and then they've spiked again in this most recent drought, but they were starting a downward trend. Moving to the monitoring well near El Estero, you can see the same pattern that we had higher chloride levels during the drought of the 80s and 90s, and then they spiked again in our most recent drought. I do want to point out that the y-axis in all of these graphs is the same, so obviously the chloride level as we move inland is much lower from ocean to inland. And then again, this is our canary in the coal mine monitoring well. And you can see that even with the production that we've had over the last several dry years, there's really no spike in chlorides at that well. So we feel comfortable that our production wells are in really good shape, but we want to keep monitoring the seawater intrusion. So with that, I come to our recommendation. And I ask that council approve and adopt the City of Santa Barbara's Water Supply Management Report for the 2022 water year, finding that the groundwater resources are in long-term balance in accordance with the conjunctive management element of the city's enhanced urban water management plan. And I'm also happy to take any questions.
Okay, we have questions from council. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both. You're just smiling so much. Just a couple just quick questions, probably no-brainer questions. So if we have a 30% allocation, we have money to take, or water to take, and we need to take it, where does it go if everything stays static? If there's, I'm told March is going to be a big rain month by my grower friends, so if the lake stays up through June or July and we're looking at having to take or not take our 30% allocation, where's the destination for it?
So the good news here is a little bit in semantics, but it's our carryover water in San Luis Reservoir that spills, if San Luis Reservoir spills, and we have used all that to pay back our water debt. So the current year allocation, if it increases from 30%, we currently have about 300 acre feet left in the State Water Project after paying back water debt. It will be protected for this year, and then we would be worrying about spills next year.
Okay. And then what is the, I guess, midterm future for desal expansion? Is there any? Do we take advantage of this downtime to actually set ourselves up for the next drought in this downtime, or what do we do?
Councilmember Jordan, yeah, that's a good question, and we've already started that. I think we want to continue to explore and lay out what we need to do, because I think as we found, droughts can sneak up on you fast, and I think expansion is going to take some time, certainly if we want to do it right. So I think we want to finish doing our planning and be ready for that. There is a lot of threats, as you know, to our water supplies and water rights, and I think we should be planning to continue to bolster our local supplies.
Does, I would just imagine as we coast this way with more water, more choices that we've already paid for and amortized, and our rates are not catching up anymore. Now our rates are probably ahead. Our budget is probably better than expected, right? Financially, and will continue to be until you do the next rate cycle and reflect what the actual cost of water is, right? Does that kind of make sense?
It's a little more complicated with
that.
inflation, but yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're going to be coming back to talk about.
So does that give us the opportunity to have resources available right now to do those? Because I know, just in my words, we can't just save money for 20 years from now. So, but does that give us the opportunity right now with the financial resources that we're bringing in to look to do that advanced planning, or actually make capital plans now for 5 years from now?
It does, and as part of the budget that we're proposing for FY24, we have put in some money for some desal master planning to kind of put some teeth to that, so we actually know clearly what we're going to do. Currently, our enhanced urban water management plan kind of lays out what the triggers are, so now we just need to have a tight plan as to what needs to get executed when the time comes.
Okay, and then just two more questions, I think. Recycled water still challenged under the situation that we've had, just performing but not performing as well as we want to, expensive, all of those are still characteristics?
No, recycled water is performing well right now. Staff have gotten a good handle on it. The improvements that we made to the El Estero secondaries have really stabilized the water quality. So recycled water has been performing well. There hasn't been a lot of demand for it, but it is performing well.
That kind of leads to my real question. So again, in this point in time where maybe we're financially a little more secure, and certainly water security we're a little more secure, are there larger potential targets that are out there right now that we could do that, $1 million a mile of purple pipe and incentivize to be ready for the next time when we would rather use recycled water rather than we would rather have them use our recycled water rather than potable water for their landscaping. Are you looking forward to something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very timely. I'll have Ms. Corey talk about it. We just finished a recycled water market study, so we looked at where it makes sense to extend the system. So maybe she can
Sure. Thanks, Councilmember Jordan. So as Mr. Hagmark said, we just in the fall completed our recycled water market assessment, and the idea there was to identify potential big users and then cost out the piping to get the water to those big users, and basically come up with a cost effectiveness matrix. We compared the cost to reach those customers to our most expensive water supplies, which in any given year could be state water or desal water. And it turns out that actually even to reach some of our biggest users is not cost effective. We did have one segment of pipe that could serve a commercial laundry that could be cost effective at about $1,700 per acre foot to put that pipe in. That would be a new recycled water use for us in the community, and I think new for that business person. So it will take some work to kind of make sure that that is feasible for both us and the user. But other than that, the costs for the other segments skyrocketed really quickly. In the lowest was $4,800 per acre foot, and then they went up into the tens of thousands of dollars per acre foot. So it's just really not cost effective to expand the recycled water system.
And then, did I hear you say that the AMI system is it hourly reporting to the consumer?
Yeah, so my understanding is that our meters send reads back to the system each hour, and then there's a customer portal where our customers will be able to access that data.
Hourly.
Yes, and so the full deployment is starting, so this won't be available to customers until.
Because it has been daily before this, right? Maybe?
Well, it's updated nightly, but the data is on hourly increments.
So somebody snuck one in, of course, on top of my flume unit, I noticed, but then, do you know what the flume participation rate is in the city?
We have about over 2,000 people
So that's
now
pretty good.
signed up for
So,
Flume.
yep.
Encourage people to take advantage of it. Again, that's going to give you minute-by-minute water usage data.
Like second by second.
Yes.
Literally, you turn it on in the sink and your phone tells you 2 seconds later you're running at 1.6 gallons. I love the flume system. Would love to see someday the AMI do as well. I know there's just some power and bandwidth type of things there too, but happy to hear that you know that number, and would encourage you to keep pushing the flume. And I'm assuming we still give a rebate on that also, right?
We do give a rebate on that. We had a great presentation in January to Water Commission on it. Really dove into the details. Lots of good content coming out of that, the Flume meters. So yeah, really appreciate that.
Thanks so much. Happy to see you in these circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Thank you for the report. And most of them were answered, but so on the recycled water, because it specifically comes up a lot, could you speak to De La Guerra Plaza? That's one the public is very interested in.
I can, yeah. So De La Guerra Plaza will have pretty low water demands. It's not a very large landscape area. And I did look up the segment of pipe from the recycled water market study that would serve De La Guerra Plaza, and that was one that came in at $7,800 per acre foot to run that pipe. And it would have hit several other places like the courthouse and some of the other users in that area, but it's very not cost effective to put all that pipe in.
Infeasible, $7,800. That's one of the highest numbers I've ever heard of.
Yeah, let's
actually,
hope that we
for
never
per
get there
acre.
in our water supply costs.
Okay, so going back to Gibraltar, you mentioned that we have an agreement and we're trying to work on the contract to allow water to go into Kachuma so we don't raise it. But this also comes up and it's mentioned in the staff report, it's about a third of its original capacity, so roughly 12,000 now down to 4,000, give or take a little on each end. So why don't we desilt it instead of trying to raise it?
So that's an excellent question that we also receive quite a bit, Councilmember Friedman. The short answer is, again, cost effectiveness. The road up to Gibraltar is not adequate for the amount of trucks that it would take to get in and get that silt out. And then when you're thinking about disposal of all of that sediment, the cost to truck it and to dispose of it get astronomically high very quickly. There is still ideas on the table of maybe we could design some sort of, pumping solution where we could get more of that water that's kind of too silty to use now. But really our best bet right now in terms of maximizing our Gibraltar production is to continue to try to get our Warren Act contract for the pass-through agreement. That would allow us to use up to 8,000, I think it's 8,400 acre feet of water a year from Gibraltar, because anything that spilled over would be in Kachuma.
Oh, so it allows us to go basically back up to 2/3 capacity then if we're able to.
Yeah, correct.
That'd be much more cost effective than a bunch of trucks up there.
Yeah.
Among other things. And then And so this is another question that comes up frequently is we ask the public to continue to conserve, even in wet years, because we anticipate that dry years we're just around the corner. And yet we're building thousands of new housing units. And the state requirements are 8,000 now, and every 8 years they're going to be more. And so the public rightfully asks is if we're being asked to conserve, but we're creating more units here, there's a disconnect there. So can you just speak to how the housing allocation and the production of new housing and anticipated production of new housing factors into how our water management and how we do our calculations?
Absolutely. So obviously this is a really big question at the city level, because we need housing to house workforce and we need water to make sure that everybody in our community has what they need. And so when we completed our enhanced urban water management plan in 2020, at that point, the regional housing needs allocation wasn't out yet. We were a little bit ahead of the game, and so we used the regional growth forecast to 2050 for Santa Barbara County, which showed 5,700 new homes going in. But we recognized that the regional housing needs allocation was going to be higher than that. So then we did an additional scenario where we increased that amount by 30%, and we made sure that our demand projections could meet the needs for the 30% increase. The other part of this story that I think people lose sight of is that the new housing that will be going in to meet these housing needs is largely multifamily, and it's largely very efficient. Multifamily projects usually have very low landscape needs, and also they have the latest fixtures. And with plumbing codes in California, they're very, very efficient. And so the actual increments of water that you're adding with the new housing is relatively small moving forward.
So it's not a one-to-one, like a new housing unit is not similar in amounts of water that it uses versus a single-family home. You have landscaping as well. That's different in there. And so it just shows that the calculations that we're using plan for these additional units, but they use less water overall. I think you referenced that. It's an astounding fact that in the 1950s we had half the population and we're using so we have double the population now and we're using the same amount of water. And so the newer units can continue with that type of trend, so you can account for it. And would you say that the diversity of our water supply that we have with all these sources, you referenced earlier that we're one of the most diverse in the state, does that help us manage the additional housing units that come on?
Absolutely. The increase in diversity of our water supply portfolio increases both our resiliency over a long period of time and our reliability of our water supply.
Thank you.
And we're seeing that backed up in our wastewater. When Ms. Bjork was our water resources manager, they were treating around 8 million gallons a day, and we're now hovering around 5.8 million. So we've shed almost, 2.5 million gallons a day of wastewater flows and through efficiency. I mean, and that's just been in the last 10 years.
All right, Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I have mostly comments, but I do have just a couple questions. I'll save the comments for later. So, Ms. Corey, I'm always so impressed with your presentations. It's almost like you don't take a breath and you just have all this information to download to us, and it's always an incredible presentation, so just thank you for that. So I had a question about, and maybe if you could just give us some more detail, for the Cachuma secured pipeline, it's not just resiliency, but it also impacts water quality. So if you could give us a little bit more detail on those impacts.
Certainly. Thank you, Councilmember Sneddon. Yeah, because the pipeline basically goes out into the deeper part of the lake. When the lake gets really low, we're pulling up higher quality water because it's deeper, and you're not pulling up kind of like the silty water in the shallows. And so there are definitely water quality benefits associated with the project. Another benefit is that we can mobilize the emergency pumping facility in 4 months versus what used to take a year when we had to also put in a temporary pipeline. And so that allows us to be much more nimble and not have so many false starts, which saves costs.
And then does that higher quality water, it doesn't need as much chlorine treatment or as much chemical treatment? Is that?
Yeah, I would use less treatment at Decatur Water Treatment Plant.
Thanks. I think it's such a, I'm so excited that it's in. So I really want to emphasize all the benefits. And then for the, I'm also a big fan of the Flume and the hourly AMI, and brings me to catching leaks. And I know we've been in communication a lot in the hillside. It seems that everything is leaking all at once. And what should residents do to monitor if they have a leak? A lot of times it isn't until they get a $2,000 water bill that they realize they've lost all this water. And what is it that people in community can do to stay on top of it? And if they do get to that point, what should they do then?
Sure. So another great question, Councilmember Sneddon. We have an active water conservation program that can help residents that think they might have a leak. We do at first virtual or phone orientations and evaluations of the water supply at somebody's house, and we can really help them find those leaks. So it could be a running toilet, or it could be a leak that you think of more in the physical sense where, there's a pipe leaking. And so I recommend that our community member reach out for help if they have an idea that they might have a leak. Another huge source of leaks is landscape irrigation. So if you have an outdoor irrigation system that goes on at 4 in the morning, turn it on once in a while and just give it a once over. Do you have a valve stuck? Is there a sprinkler head that's blown off and you've got a geyser going? Sometimes if you're watering early in the morning, you might come out and it's wet outside, but you don't have an idea that there's a leak actually on your property. So doing an inspection monthly of your landscape irrigation system is a really good idea.
Will the AMI or the Flume catch an irrigation leak?
Absolutely.
And then that brings me to my last question about, I know that there's so many different incentives that the city is offering in terms of water-wise gardening or stormwater capture or the Flume, or if you could just give us some resources and where people can go to see all of these programs, because there's so many and they're really amazing.
Yeah, so we have a robust water conservation website on the city's website that outlines all of our programs, and we have things like rebates for mulch to help you reduce the evaporation of water in your yard. We have the Flume rebate. We are just now launching, it went in the city news and brief today or yesterday maybe, our new landscape rebate program, which converts turf, high water using turf landscape to a more water efficient landscape. There's also rebates available for retrofitting irrigation systems that are inefficient to more water efficient models. There's a wealth of resources. There's a lot of information on how to read your meter, how to detect a leak. So I definitely encourage people to visit the city's website for water conservation.
Thank you so much. And I have comments, but I'll wait on those.
All right, very good. Any further questions for staff? I do have one speaker for this item, E-Planet Thunderstriker. 3 minutes.
Well, that report was great, and it sounded like we're like in this dire water need that I was going to try and comment on. She did mention something about getting water in other places, and I just spoke to the supervisors about, we had the Central Arizona project in the 90s, and maybe if we had like this water that we're trying to travel, just a simple ditch, concrete ditch, and it could, where you need to, you could pump water up several feet in order to let gravity take you a little bit further. So that was one. I don't know if that'll help anything. I was talking about maybe different desalination plants throughout the state, doing something like that, because we had this good rainfall, 35 inches or whatever, and now everything is great, but it seems to me like before it was always so dire, and the desalination plant is getting some work that it's needed since 2017, I guess, so that's good. But is it possible that we could start having extra water that we could give to somebody else? I don't know, that's just a thought. And so the last question I guess I have is that before the Kachuma reached its current 99% capacity, where was it before that?
It was around 30% capacity,
Oh, okay,
and it went up
okay.
overnight.
So it could be a little bit improved over the long term. Okay, you guys, thank you for listening.
All right, very good. Mr. Friedman, back to council now.
Great, thank you. I just first want to thank Ms. Corey, you do an outstanding job day in and day out, and Mr. Hagmark leading the department and managing our water resources. And I think it's important that the public realizes the great job that you do. It's not easy. It's constantly changing from one year to the next, and the many different resources that we have and trying to maximize those. And then at the same time, trying to make sure that we have the capital investment we need and properly planning it. And you're looking ahead 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years even when we're talking about desal expansion, when to do it, when to not. Because once we go down some of these paths, there's a commitment that takes place, and it costs a lot. So the more we can not put them off, but strategically time them, it impacts the rates that our customers pay. So I just want to recognize both of you and all your staff, that all the work that you put into this. And you've seen these charts, and it's very complex, but you're doing an outstanding job. Just overall, it's quite amazing what a few months makes. We were at the Central Coast Water Authority Board meeting in January, reviewing the minutes from November. And at that time, we were looking at having no state water to what we have now. And it's the same type of thing as last time we had this. We were thinking about possibly doing desal expansion this time of year. But now we're in a much different place, and we're able to really rest our groundwater reserves. I'm excited that we have no more water debt, or soon to have no more water debt. That's huge for us going forward, especially with changes in how the state water contract is run, so that we don't have to take on debt anymore if we ever need to take water. You can just straight purchase it. And then turning off the desal for a couple of months not only will save electricity costs, but give us the time that you said to look at maintenance of it. And then really just understanding the Gibraltar, that even though we only have 44,000 plus acre feet there, that we're getting 8,000. That's something I didn't quite understand until today, and that's important for us, because that's a lot of water that we're able to maximize out of Cachuma. So, and then also the pilot project for the groundwater that we're injecting, because that's going to be key to maybe speeding up the timeline for recovery of the groundwater. So just a lot in there, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you for walking us through how new housing units impact it, because that's probably the #1 question on water that I get from the public. And I thought you put a really good, answered the questions really well, and the information that's essential to the public understanding. So great work. Thank you.
Ms. Nedden.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Just one of my favorite things that you say, and you say it so often, is tracking according to plan. And it might sound so simple, but you're doing water projections 2 years out, 3 years out, and then constantly coming in. And we've had extreme drought and then extreme water events. So for you to be able to come here and say it's tracking according to plan is really reassuring for the public too, and the diversified water portfolio we manage and you manage and talk about as maybe one of the most diverse in the state. And we're always covering our bases and making sure that we're planning for the future. And that takes such a concerted effort, and you're so transparent with that and open. And on the Enhanced Urban Water Management Plan took so much community input in that as well. So just being in partnership with community, I really appreciate. I also appreciate that you plan conservatively. When you say there's going to be enough water for the next 3 years, I really believe you, because I know that you wouldn't say that. You're not just fudging the numbers to get us to have a complacency, and I always appreciated that. And also, we've talked a lot about the new normal and new baselines, and we've played around with that graph. I mean, Councilmember Jordan, when he was on Water Commission also, it's everyone's favorite graph. And how to even start handling or talking about what the new normal is. Just when we're getting used to that we're in extended historic droughts over and over, then we get weather events like this. So just your ability to pivot and to always be managing that portfolio is really astonishing. And I just want to take a second, also on top of appreciating AMI and Flume and people being able to manage their leaks and have agency over their information and data about what's happening with their water. But I just want to say that the Water Commission, I want to acknowledge our incredible Water Commission and council for appointing them. That has to be one of the tightest groups of experienced professionals, researchers, all kinds of experience packed in that room, and being such careful stewards of the water and in partnership with your staff input and expertise too. So I can't say enough about the Water Commission and water management and in the city, and you've just done such a stellar job. And I'm happy to move the staff recommendation if that's appropriate.
All right, very good. Well, now that we've returned to the land of milk and honey, I must say that I do appreciate your efforts through the times when things were thin, because rather than beat people over the head with self-loathing and fear, you instilled a bunch of confidence in ways to save water. I actually questioned the extension of the use line on a 45-degree angle up. I think our people have shown that they're better than that, and that we can do that without trying to instill fear or beat them into submission or get them into drought fatigue, as Mr. Hagmark used to like to say. So well done, because I think you've given our population the confidence that it's manageable, it's handleable, and that we can continue on even though we're always on the edge of a new drought. With that, I will entertain a motion for the staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Friedman. I don't have to ask that. You got to put it up on the tote board, don't you?
And this is a motion for the recommended action, motion by Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman.
We have a winner. Thank you very much. Good job.
That's a unanimous vote.
All right, thank you. Get ready for the next item. Would you read the next item, please, Madam Clerk?
Next item is item 10, appeals of Planning Commission's approval of a coastal development permit at 2315 Edgewater Way.
So before we get going on this item, Ms. Bjork has an announcement.
Mayor Rouse, council members, I believe there may be interest from the applicant in continuing this item. Some new information came in that is able to be considered by the council, but has not had a chance, the applicant themselves have not had very much time to look at it. I do not know if they are interested in that, but my recommendation to council would be that you hear from both the applicant and the appellants about their thoughts on continuing this item to a future date.
Okay.
And Mayor Rouse, if you should choose to do so, then we would do the staff presentation at that future date.
All right, so, and Madam Administrator, so time limits on the first request for potentially or a
Mayor Rouse, I would suggest you treat it like public comment and limit it to 3 minutes each. And then if you do go forward with the appeal today, we would go with the regular appeal procedure.
Okay, very good. Then, if we may, let's hear first from the applicant. And if you would do the timer, please, Madam Clerk. 3 minutes, please.
Hi, Mayor, council members. Beth Collins, I'm a land use attorney. I was hired just today on this matter, so I'm asking you very kindly for an extension for us to be able to assess. We just got a bunch of information filed late last week. It is the dates on that information, actually, if you go back to December and early January, but it wasn't filed with the city until February 1. So my clients would like some more time, please, and we hope that you all agree. This is, a big deal to them. They're been working on this for a long time, but they're willing to take the additional time because they want to get it right. So, thank you.
All right, very good. And then we'll hear from the appellant. Is there an appellant in the audience? There we go. And this is just to the subject of whether or not to continue this item.
Yes. Esteemed council members, thank you for listening to me. I'd humbly request for this appeal to go forward today. When the development under
Mr.
consideration.
Mayor, could you please have the speaker put his name on the record?
Sorry, my name is Mahesh Balakrishnan.
Thank you.
When the development plan here was approved by the Planning Commission, I, along with a few of our neighbors, were very surprised that the geology report didn't get a closer look, given there's a history of instability on this specific bluff, and a number of residents who live on that bluff, including me, are here today. We thought it would be an uphill battle to overturn something where there was an expert involved and the city was recommending in favor of it. Thankfully, I was put in touch with some very, very qualified experts, but also very expensive experts. And I spent a lot of money and time getting the information together. And Lauren, who represents one of the geology firms, is here, and she has an abbreviated presentation that doesn't necessarily, there's a lot of technical stuff, but she doesn't need to go through all of that. She can make it digestible for this council, for even the applicant, so that I and my neighbors who are in the same situation have some path forward in terms of how much money we need to keep spending. At least the issues that are raised there could be addressed by the applicant when they come back. And so we have everything prepared. We'd really appreciate this going forward. If it can't be completed today, at least the salient points can be heard. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Well, it is important that we get this right. Ms. Bjork, if it were to be continued, what would be the potential hearing date?
Mayor Rouse, that would be April 25th.
April 25th, okay, very good. So we will speak to the issue of continuance. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My discomfort with this is an appeal was filed on by two parties, both the second week of October 2022, but literally hundreds of pages of supporting documents in support of that appeal were dropped on the city last Wednesday. I would not be in a position to recognize any of those documents that were provided. I haven't had an opportunity to see them. I was actually just given access to them today, not in an outside Dropbox link, because that's how it was sent to people, and we don't follow outside Dropbox links. So I'm in support of moving it to a time when both parties have equal standing in regards to the evidence they're presenting.
Very good. Okay. Is that in the form of a motion, Mr. Jordan?
If you're ready to go there, I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay. Ms. Gutierrez?
I second that motion.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion?
Mayor Rouse?
Ms. Ostrander.
Excuse the interruption. To the maker of the motion, Councilmember Jordan, could we set that for a date certain as to April 25th so that we don't have to renotice the project?
If that's the date you guys have picked out, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Sure. Seconder? Okay with that?
Second that.
Okay. Very good. Any further comment? Any other discussion on the motion? Everybody understand the motion? Mr. Gutierrez?
Yeah, I just want to say apologies for those all involved for the anxiety or stress this may cause, but we just want to make sure that this is fair and that we do our due diligence on the item. Thank you.
All right, very good. And with that, Madam Clerk, we will go to a vote. Does everybody understand the motion? It's to continue to April 25 is the motion on the floor.
And that is a motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez to continue the appeal to April 25th. Okay, let's start the vote.
Motion carries unanimously, so we will continue till April 25th. All right, very good. We will continue on to council and staff communications, which is council committee assignment reports. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Puerto Vallarta Sister Cities dinner and fundraiser with you, Mr. Mayor, and it was really well attended. We also participated in the East Side SB Act walk and spoke with business owners about how we can better assist them. Attended the ribbon cutting for a new therapy center on the Riviera. Attended the South Coast Chamber annual meeting, and that was really well attended by several of us here. Attended the ribbon cutting for Augie's on State Street, nice new restaurant. Attended the Golden Eagle screening at the Historical Museum, really educational about local history. Attended the Elected Leaders Forum on homelessness with several of you. Attended the Santa Barbara Sister Cities TOBA discussion at the library about the internment camps. That was very educational. Attended the Coffee with the Black Guy on Sunday, and also the Holocaust Remembrance March in Isla Vista. And yeah, that's about it for me. Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I also attended the Chamber of Commerce Annual Awards and the Elected Leaders Forum to address homelessness, and that's regional participation through other cities and throughout our county. Attended Friendship Center fundraiser, and just a reminder that there are many events put on through the Black Culture House through the end of February, which is also sponsored by the city.
And Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I also attended the Chamber Annual Awards, the grand opening for Augie's, and the Mosaic Therapy grand opening.
All right, very good. And if there is no further reports, we will consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you.
you.